At this point, Canes fans, it goes without saying, it's Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. That's a magical combination of day and time, of course, because Cam Underwood is here to deliver Miami football analysis with all of you. We will take your comments and questions for the next hour. And, of course, put State of the U on the forefront of your mind when you check out Miami athletics and football in particular as we head on through the off season, of course, and head toward August camp. We got official visits coming up soon, and we will get to all of your comments and questions. Cam, how you doing tonight?
Good, man. Well rested. I actually had to work super early at the secret day job today, so I got up from a nap a solid 15 minutes ago. I'm rested, refreshed, and ready for everybody. So, it's good to be here. Great to see you, and let's get it popping.
So you're one of those people that can 15 and that energized.
No. I woke up 15 minutes ago.
Okay. I was going to say
rest time. But I mean, if I got to, yeah, I'll take a power nap.
Okay. All right. Some people that, forget it. That works the adverse. But all right. Everybody jump on in. But our number one topic tonight involves the entirety of the conference. So the ACC, much like the other Power 5 conferences, are looking at, okay, what's going to put them in a best position as the playoff is most likely going to be expanded in regards to best team equaling the conference champion and not having, because of the division format, possibly a third, fourth, fifth best team in the conference playing its best game on championship night and getting into a playoff. And then also the consideration of getting the most possible teams as at large teams into the playoffs. So the ACC seems to be out in front of the other conferences in regards to seriously coming up with a plan and nearing a destination possibly. And Cam will let you roll it out.
Yeah, so Dave Teal, he's a journalist in the North Carolina area. He's the one who I first saw put this up on the timeline yesterday. And if it came first from somebody else, then please let me know and I'll give that person credit. But until now, I will say I think it's the News and Observer that he writes for or works with. If that's wrong also, then I apologize. But David Teal is his name, and he reported that the ACC is looking to go to a 3-5-5 scheduling model moving forward. And what those numbers mean, for every team, there will be 3 every year matchups. Those are your standards. Those are your staples, your tent poles of the schedule. So 3 teams you will play every year, home and away, home and away, home and away. And the other 10 teams in the league, because there's 14, so your team 1, you play 2, 3, and 4. Those are going to be your rotating guys. So the 3 teams you play every year. The other 10 teams are going to be split up into every other year groups, pods, if you will. Well, they're not necessarily pods, but groups. And so you would play Group A of 5 one year, and they would be split, 2 away, 3 home, and then Group B the next year, 3 home, 2 away, and then they would rotate just back and forth between A and B, and then the other the second rotation, then it would be flipped. So if in Group A, the first time that you play them, let's say it was this year, right? So in 2022, you're going to play your 3 tentpole staple rivalry teams. Then you're going to play Group A. 2 of those are going to be home, 3 of those are going to be away, just so it works out. In 2024, then the next time that you play Group A, it'll be 3 home and 2 away. And it'll just obviously be flipped from whoever, it swaps every other year. So you play at every single stadium in 4 years. So if a player were to stay 4 years, they would play at every single team in the conference in their stadium. So you get a home and away, and actually you get 2 times to play them in a 4-year college career. So it's something that makes sense. It kind of almost, you can call it pods. It's not necessarily exactly. But like if you wanted an idea for that, Bill Conley, when he was at SB Nation, he wrote a wonderful explainer about pods. His was like on a 12-team conference, it was 4 groups of 3. So you would play the 2 teams in your pod, and then you would play 2 different pods, 1 home, 1 away, for the other games in the schedule. So it's very similar to that, but with a 14-team thing, obviously you can't just have 12 in there, so you have to modify it slightly to get towards that. Also, if you're a fan of like Premier League soccer, Bill Connolly's done a long string when he was at SB Nation about FBS relegation and promotion. So teams from other divisions moving up and moving down at the top of things. So that's a kind of a thought experiment. But in terms of the ACC schedule, so you got to look at every team having their 3 annual games, tentpole, staples, rivalries, whatever you want to call it, and then splitting the conference, the rest of the groups, the rest of the teams in half, play 5 one year, play 5 the next year. The thing for me is, and I'm upset because I had a big meeting today at the secret day job, which is why I had to work early. P.S. by the way, your boy killed it like we always do at this time. But it took me away from being able to create the content that I wanted to, and I'm mad at Justin Tavio because, I'm mad online. I'm figuratively mad because he wrote the piece that was in my brain, but I was just exhausted. I didn't get a chance to. So looking at who could be Miami's, well, he said third rival, third tentpole team. And that matters. I saw The Athletic, they put up a thing looking at and evaluating who the 3 tentpole teams would be on each schedule. But in terms of Miami, Florida State, duh. We play them every year right now anyway with divisions. Like, come on. A prevailing thought was Virginia Tech because we've shared 2 different conferences with them. So there's something along those lines. I saw people saying Boston College to bring that back from the Big East days. The ACC has intentionally tried to make Miami Pitt a rivalry. In so many, there's been so many years where they've put that game the day after Thanksgiving, a la 2017, or the weekend after Thanksgiving. We know what happened then. There's been other years, many other years, that ACC has said, okay, cool. We don't have anybody for Miami into the season. Pittsburgh, bang. Again, another Big East team and everything. Going back to the Antonio Bryant, God rest his soul days, going back to Larry Fitzgerald and things like that. And then trying to make that a rivalry or force that kind of square peg into a round hole. And depending on the teams in your group, pod, whatever, that would kind of speak towards maybe what the fortunes of each individual program would be, because, they could do something like put Miami, Florida State, and Clemson in the same pod, with the tentpole team. So you're playing them every year, but why would you do that? But I'm pretty confident. Well, I'm fully confident. Put that on my good name. If they go this way, Miami and Florida State is going to be every year, because Miami and Florida State is always every year already. Duh. There's some good options for 2 and 3. But I don't think that there's any slam dunk option, honestly, for the 2nd and 3rd tentpole rivalry if the ACC goes to the 3-5-5 scheduling model, which, again, they've apparently been looking at and could implement as early as 2023.
All right. So as soon as I mention this 3-letter word, some people go crazy that love college football and don't like the next level. But I'm going to throw out the word or the initials NFL. Not because I'm trying to make college football like the NFL. The NFL, people understand, is purposed on creating parity. So they're trying to lift up the low-end teams and suppress the best teams. They do this through the NFL draft. If anyone stops and thinks about it, there's no other reason that the teams select in the order that they do for the NFL draft. That's not fair. That's suppressing the best teams and lifting up the worst teams. They did nothing to earn that draft position. If they did it fairly, they would do it randomly. Let's say randomly in the first round, and then create a draft order that played off of that first round. So if you selected, let's say, first in the first round, you'd select last in the second round, and so forth and so on. That would be fair. Same thing with scheduling. They give the better teams from the previous season tougher schedules, and they give the worst teams easier schedules. So I am not proposing to do that in an NFL way, but I am proposing to do it formulaically like the NFL, to create an equal or equitable scheduling system. So what I would do would be, and I'm not completely vetted this, but I don't like these artificial rivalries. So for example, in the ACC right now, as Cam has alluded to and generally addressed, you play everyone in your division. You play two teams from the other division each season. Well, those two teams, one is designated. You play them every year. For Florida State, Miami. For Miami, it's Florida State. But the other one rotates through the other 6 teams, so you only see them once every 6 years. Some of those rivalries are just fill in the blank. We had nobody for Boston College and for is there a rivalry between Boston College and Virginia Tech? No, those are just placeholders. Well, I don't know why they have to. North Carolina, NC State, absolutely. Miami, Florida State, absolutely. If you follow college football historically, Clemson, Georgia Tech, a lot of people would be in on that, but it is a rivalry going way, way back. Get it. But why do you have to do that with everyone? I don't agree with that.
Yeah, and yeah, it stretches. I mean, like you're talking about, and like I said, as well. The 1, yeah. The 2 and 3 for every team. There, and look, the exception is going to be the North Carolina Research Triangle, right?
Yes,
because you can put, on Carolina's schedule, you can put Duke and State.
Yeah.
And you can put those 3 and then add in, if you want to add Wake Forest, fine. So that's your, whatever. But yeah, you're gonna for Carolina, it's gonna be Duke and State. For State, it's gonna be Carolina and probably Clemson for Textile Bowl. The agricultural school in both states. That's a traditional rivalry. Okay, fine. And you're gonna do things like that. So I mean, yeah, there's some that are just like, well, but then again, there's 3, so you're probably gonna add in a third one. So for Carolina, you're gonna add it would probably be Wake, State, and Duke. That would be your 3. For State, it's going to be Carolina. Yeah, it's going to be Carolina, Duke, or Wake. I don't know which one they have a stronger feel for. And then Clemson for the Textile Bowl. So like there's ones, okay, cool, where it's like 2 and then a reasonable third for the teams in the triangle, or things like that. But just like we're an outlier, and that's okay. I'm fine with being an outlier. But like, yeah, we have 1. And then a couple possibles, to use Spade's parlance. I mean, but then like, yeah, Boston College, do they have a 1 even? But
Syracuse.
Okay, but that's really
1
from proximity more than anything
Pittsburgh,
else. But okay,
they have 1.
Right. I mean, but you're going to have to then to make the 3-5-5 work. That means you're going to have 3 teams planted on the schedule every year, which, to your point, is a little bit of manufacturing rivalryness. And again, like if you're going with the 3-5-5, that means unless you're going to redo the paradigm again in the future, you are saying this 14 pod plays everybody every single year from now until we switch the scheduling paradigm. So it's not even going to be a thing where I think like, okay, cool, this year or for 3 years, it's going to be, just using Miami instead of centering other people, right? So it's not going to be Miami, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Boston College, right? It's not going to be that for 3 years. And then, okay, well, for the Miami 3, we're going to now change it up. And like, no, we're going to leave that because you have to have that to build everything else around. So yeah, there would be a level of manufacturing rivalries and things like that for the sake of the schedule. But I mean, to make an omelet, you got to crack some eggs. So it seems like they're going to do that in terms of just kind of being like, you and you together, make it happen.
Okay. Again, the way I would do it is I would protect what I consider to be the rivalries. And of course, there would be a brain trust. It wouldn't just be me saying these are rivals, because I would certainly adhere to what could be blind spots, missing something. So we would vet out all the rivals, make sure that those are protected each year. And then otherwise, we would build a composite 500 schedule for everyone in conference, meaning Miami's 2022 schedule would be cumulative 500 record of all those ACC teams from the previous year. Because it's impossible to build a fair schedule because you can't see into the future to know who's going to improve and who's going to decline. But you can build as close to one as possible by creating a composite 500 schedule. Some of these schedules that are built by these conferences are unfair.
They are. I mean, but college football has long been the haves and have-nots. And it takes a real yeoman's work for a have-not to become a have. And also, conversely, it takes real intentionality for a have to become a have-not. But yeah, I think that would work. And that's what the NFL plans to do. But obviously, you're going off of last year's performance, not projecting the future. So it could be 500 or very close to it, record from the previous year. And then, the way that life happens and the way that sports work, like everybody's not going to perform the same. So some teams are going to be better and worse. And, that's how you get the strength of schedule that looks like, oh, wow, the Lions are playing, the dregs of the earth and still losing because Lions suck. I know that, but whatever. But yeah, they're playing teams with a, low cumulative win percentage this current year versus somebody else who's, it was supposed to be an easy schedule, but now they're playing teams with a very high cumulative winning percentage this current year. But the intentionality, like you're talking about, the system, the formulaic way in which it was cultivated previously, was that it's more or less equal, but then obviously dynamic in the given season based upon team performance.
No, I'm not proposing a perfect system, but programs and teams generally stay on their level. So it would produce, by and large, a much fairer schedule than what is currently produced.
Yeah, and I think that obviously, I think you would see it in the micro, like, in the single season, but if you extended it out 5 or 10 seasons in the macro, you would really see the leveling. I mean, because like a little, deviation one way or another, when you're talking about 1 season or 2 seasons, it can seem like a wide, delta change and things like that. But over the course of time, then those peaks and valley points of the data chart kind of get more leveled. And I think that you would see that over time. But
and then the only other consideration that would need to be made under my system is that my committee, let's say, would need to keep track of, because there wasn't that formatted rotation. Okay, Duke hasn't seen Miami in 6 years. They need to play. There would be that checks and balances portion of it as well.
Yeah.
All right, Cam, anything else on the scheduling?
Man, no, it's just, I mean, the thought experiment really starts with the 3, because then that informs the 10 teams that would be left over. And then you have to evaluate who would be the 5 and then the other 5, because you don't want a murderer's row per se on the 1-5 and then just like a cakewalk on the other 5. Nobody wants that. The team, in conference teams don't want that, because it would be a tough, road to hoe the 1 year and then like a cakewalk the next, which, you could talk about, team performance and things like that. And then, just obviously like you're talking about, looking towards the expanded college football playoff and things like that and whatnot. So, yeah, it really starts with the 3. And then once you know or have decided, and in Miami's case, again, you're going to have to pick a 3 to then get towards the 10 to then look at. But if it were up to me, which it's clearly not, but it should be because I'm smarter than most of you, it's Florida State, Virginia Tech, and insert third team here. I'm fine with Pittsburgh. Like, it doesn't move me, or anything, but the ACC has tried to push that. And if they want to keep that as one of the 3 tent poles for Miami, fine. I don't really think that there's anybody else. I mean, I would say like a Virginia, but there's no reason for Miami to have tent poles with Virginia and Virginia Tech. But there's a very much stronger case for a tent pole for Virginia Tech in the 3 annual games. So But yeah, I would say Florida State, Virginia Tech, and Pittsburgh would probably be my look at 3. I can hear some people probably saying like that's a pretty tough 3. That's probably one of the better 3-team groups that you can assemble. So then maybe looking at lowering the level or the caliber of program from one of the other 2. I mean, Florida State's nobody's world beaters right now, even though, yeah, they beat us last year, but they're not, national championship, 17 years in a row, top 5 Florida State. They're not that right now. I mean, I think that we can all agree about that, even the guys from last hour's show. That's just a point of fact. But that's a different kind of game and everything. So, I mean, if people want to say, oh, let's make it Duke instead for a consistently easy game that Miami should be winning most years, even though we found a way to lose to them 2 years in a row a couple years ago. Thank you, Manny Diaz, for that. I would be open to that scenario as well.
What I'm guessing is going to happen is, let's say they go down that road of Florida State, of course, and let's say Virginia Tech, that they're going to hold off on that 3rd spot until they start filling in all the other spots that are required. And a lot of those are just going to turn out to be defaults.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to throw Syracuse over there because they're the one that's left. So there's going to be
it's going to be a lot. I mean, there's going to be, the 1 or 2 that are real firm, set it in stone, 10 commandments kind of way. And then everybody needs a 3rd team. Let's kind of look and then see. And I think that 3rd team guy also goes towards the remaining 10 to see, okay, do we want to have them annually or in that rotation, and then kind of filtering down to get that 3rd team. So, I agree that it will be some, just list making stuff as opposed to traditional draw at a certain point for some schools in their tentpole group. And I think that Miami would be one of those, like we're seeing in this discussion.
And you mentioned the Georgia Tech Clemson rivalry. So Georgia Tech gets, laden with Clemson all the time. They already do. You wonder if they balance that out with, they would never state this, but trying to take historically the worst program. Historically, actually, it's Wake Forest if you look at winning percentages, but certainly they've been much better than that recently. So maybe they say, well, Georgia Tech, we're going to throw you Duke to try to balance that out.
Yeah, we'll throw you a Duke or a Syracuse or, somebody like that and hope that balances because, you annually play Clemson, which, at a time was like a thing and okay, cool. But then Clemson became this version of Clemson, and oh boy, that changes it's a thing. Like Miami and Florida State, it's always like a thing. But then when Florida State bossed up a little bit in the early mid 2010s, it kind of changed things.
Yeah, right now Georgia Tech doesn't matter, but 3-4 years ago and before that, Paul Johnson's Georgia Tech, they just went to a ACC championship game in 2014. Take that situation when they're a factor, and everybody should be treated on the schedule as a factor. Nothing should be a given like, oh, it's just Duke, so we don't care who we put on their schedule. That it should be, everything should be taken seriously. Since they already have Clemson, and when they cycle to a certain team, let's say back in the day, 2014, if Georgia Tech would cycle to, that other team non-division is Florida State, then suddenly you've got a brutal non-division schedule, and you're competing for a division title with Pittsburgh, who let's say that year has Syracuse and BC when they're no good, and it creates a very uneven and unfair situation for teams that are competing for a championship.
Thanks.
I'll use this one example before we move on. I was going through this process and I looked at the SEC, and this was about 8 or 9 years ago, something in that range. Alabama and LSU, of course, play in the same division. So they play the same 5 opponents in their division, play each other. So there's the 2 crossovers. In this particular year, Alabama was playing Tennessee and Vanderbilt. And those two teams were a combined 1-15 in the conference the year before. They were 1-7 and 0-8. LSU, who they were their chief competitors for the division championship. This is back, when LSU was as good as Alabama practically. LSU was playing Georgia and Florida, who were 7-1, 7-1 the year before. So you're having two teams compete for a division championship. One of them plays two non-division opponents who went 1-15 the year before. The other one plays two division opponents that went 14-2 the year before. I think that can be avoided.
I agree.
All right. Super chats coming in. Falconer X, we appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for that. As always, sir. Falconer X coming back with this comment. What about out of conference like Ohio State, Florida, Notre Dame, or USC? How could they fit in?
So there are 8 games every year in the 3-5-5. You have your 3 tent poles, 5 other conference games for a total of 8 with your 4 non-conference. So your total 8, and then you still have room for your 4 non-conference as is standard right now. So you can still fold them in. Notre Dame is a tangential team because they have the agreement with the ACC to be able to have the non-conference. So you're going to still have them as one of your non-conference games. So yeah, that does fit in the paradigm. We're really just looking again at the conference schedule, how that will be formulated, how that will work. And then teams will still grab their other 4 teams for non-conference, such as the teams that you listed and any others, including your, ceremonial FCS, sacrificial lamb, your Central Connecticut State, your FAMU, your Bethune-Cookman, one of those feature teams, and then, probably another mid-major team, and then just another kind of, who it could be mid-major, it could be more. Thank you for all the super chats, man. Came one, appreciate that, and everything. To the question before all the super chats from John Sarian, his question was about Braylon. Forget the kid's name right now. Braylon Shelby, excuse me.
Yes.
From Texas. So he's Friendswood, Texas, just outside of Houston, or in the Houston area. Roderick Wright is from Texas. He played at Texas. He played in the league, defensive ends coach, and he was out there, offered Shelby today or yesterday, 6'4", 240, with a long wingspan from the picture on 247. This kid, so he had almost 80 tackles. He had double-digit sacks, things like that. He's quick, he's twitchy. It looks like from a quick look at his huddle earlier. I haven't done a super deep dive on him, but he performed really well as a junior, and I think that he's a guy, as it's termed in the piece, Gabby Rudy on 247, that he's a fast rising senior. So that's somebody who really did well as a junior, and now people are taking notice in the spring evaluation season, where you're going back and you're looking at the film, you're going back and looking at all those kind of things, and then evaluating the players and meeting with them and things like that, and expanding your board. So Sarian is a guy who USC, Texas, Miami have all offered recently. I do not think that he's going to be a 4-star or 3-star for long. He's going to be bumped up to a 4-star, especially with this combination of height and length and quick twitch athleticism. It's early just because he has only recently gotten offered. I saw that Gabby, when he tweeted out the piece about Sarian, said that Sarian on vacation last year took a self-guided tour of the University of Miami campus, which is gorgeous if you've never been, but everybody here watching, of course, it's been the University of Miami campus. You know what I'm talking about. Beautiful Coral Gables, all those kind of things. But yeah, he went down and then with his family took a self-guided tour. So he's somebody who's already been here. Now, that was not necessarily one of the necessary unofficial visits that you need in terms of current cycle recruiting to get a player, but that does add some intrigue because he's been already. He's not just a guy from Houston who's like, okay, cool, whatever. But he's already, had feet on the ground in the 305. So yeah, I think that Miami could factor in. I know the Rod Wright factor of him being a Texas native, going back into his native home state to recruit can be a good thing in this, but it's way too early to tell how serious it's going to be. But I don't necessarily think that this is just a speculative offer, just like, oh, we wanted to get on this kid's offer sheet to say that we offered him. But there is still recruiting that needs to happen. with this guy. So he's on the board as potentially possible at this point. But, there's plenty of distance to go here in this recruitment. So just know that. But seems to be a good player who's going to play in a Power 5 conference at a minimum, is getting looks from top-end Power 5 teams. So I think it's good that Miami has a Texas native in Rod Wright recruiting him, already offered. And then, if we decide to push, we'll see. But, you could do far worse than, kicking the tires on a player of the caliber that I assume, and it seems that Sarian is.
There is a couple different series ideas we've come up with. One would be that I noticed in looking at the calendar the other day, there are 12 weeks until August camp. So we would like to bring on some opponent media, most of them for just a quick hit. Not everyone's going to care that much about fill in the blank game. Duke, we'll put them in there, and others, but other games obviously much more weighty, like Texas A&M and others. So I'm in the process of reaching out to some media to come on here and chop it up regarding some of the 2022 opponents, whether that be on this the Wednesday show with Cam or Thursday. So we're going to do that. And also looking through recruiting classes, and this is often a topic I bring up with Cam, my fascination with ratings and rankings and the reevaluation of these classes years down the road. We're going to focus first on the current roster. And so for 2021, in absence of any other topics or questions right now, we're going to run through the 23 commits for Miami here in 2021.
Let's pause real quick. We do have Daniel Henry with his question on the screen.
Oh, yes, we do. We do. And there was a reason I put that up there. So Daniel's checking in concerning Jalen Knighton.
Yeah, and he again is a top caliber recruit, high school All-American, one of 2 players ever to have rushed for 5,000 yards in high school in Broward County history. He and the late great Tyrone Moss at Pompano Ely, God rest his soul, are the only 2 who've ever done that, 5,000 yards in a high school career in Broward County, Florida. Knighton was being heavily pursued by lots of teams, including O State. He is doing well. He needs to be a rotation guy. He needs to be a touches guy, not a 25 carries between the tackles. He's not a workhorse back. I'm sorry. He's a speed guy. You're 5'10", 180 pounds. You're not going to withstand that beating. And for one game and everybody got injured and we weren't really comfortable going to anybody else and he had 33 carries, I want to say, cool. But I don't think that he's ever going to get north of 25. It shouldn't even be really more than 22 carries in the game. But that being said, punt returns, kick returns, in the passing game, we've seen him score some long touchdowns on wheel routes because he has electric speed. And it seems like he's ready to take a step forward, because if he has the ability to hit full speed and make moves and change direction at full or near full speed, I know that this was just held last week and I haven't got to watch it, but there was the F1 race at the Miami F1 the Miami Autodrome, or whatever they call it, that they built around Hard Rock Stadium. They built an F1 track. You got an F1 car on the field, and Jalen Knighton, if you're able to keep top speed and turn those corners and do those kind of things, he's an explosive player. And having a weapon like that, being able to use him out of the backfield, because he's scored long touchdowns on that slow mesh zone read, that's akin to what Wake Forest does, on just that tempo of really being slow, letting some stuff happen, bang, and I'm 2 steps to top speed, and then you're not going to catch me. North Carolina got loose 2 years ago as a freshman against and North Carolina that was on a swing route up the left sideline, and then made a cut. Gave him outside in, planted that left foot, kind of juke move. And then there was a defender with an angle And again, Jalen Knighton being able to outrun that angle. The year before against Louisville, that was a wheel route. There was another game, had a wheel route for 70 or 80-yard touchdown. So an explosive player, multi-talented. Like every running back, I think fancies himself to be a workhorse, but I think that he's best used in pace and space because he has electric speed, and we've seen it where guys, other elite athletes at the Power 5 level, even with a head of steam, even with an angle to cut him off, Jalen Knighton is that kind of fast where that doesn't matter. And yeah, hopefully he's able to continue his progression and everything, but he's at or near the top of the roster at running back, a definite weapon in this offense and one that we will rely on often. So to the question, he's performed well. There's still room for growth, but he has electric ability and incredible potential, and hopefully he still is able to take an even further step forward on top of what he's already done.
So we're going to make our way through the 21 class, and there's no reason to rush through this, because if we don't make it, and we won't make it tonight through the 21 class, we're going to make our way through the roster class by class. And again, as we make our way into the past, of course, there's going to be more data on these players with more reps and more to talk about and more room to evaluate, how they've performed against their ranking. But for right now, in the 21 class, do you want me to go player by player, or to give you a batch of players and let you pick and choose?
Let's go one by one.
All right. From the top, Leonard Taylor, the 4th rated defensive lineman in the country, top 10 player in the country, regardless of position.
Monster. An absolute monster. I don't know why it took Manny Diaz so long to get his head out of his keister and put 56 on the field. Honestly and truly. And you could see it even in warm-ups in the stadium. You know what I mean? Like, sit up in the press box or in the stands, you get in a little early and everything. Like, the kid looks different. And no, he's not the biggest physical guy. He didn't come in at 6'5", 320 and anything like that. But, like, he's 6'3.5", 6'4". He came in at 270. He was up to 280, 285, which is playable weight inside as a freshman. But yeah, just different. And you could see it. And yeah, it took a while for the coaches to get out of their own damn way, honestly, and play the kid. Because that was what it wasn't the kid not being ready. It was, they just wanted to be in the way. But the instant that Leonard Taylor hit the field, it was readily apparent, you can't put him back on the bench. You can't do it. He's, if not the best defensive tackle last year, he was 1A at that position on the roster. I know that we brought in some players from the outside. I mean, at that position to beef up, things inside. Leonard Taylor is no worse than your second best defensive tackle on this roster right now. And I will say that he clearly, to my eye, has the highest potential for future performance. And that means this year, that means next year, that means going towards the NFL draft, because I think, absent of injury, as I knock on wood on my piano, that he's a surefire top 2-round NFL draft pick. This is a different kind of special kid. And he's a player that you can and should build a defense around. He is everything that he was built to be coming out of high school and more. He is an incredible player. I'm glad that he's wearing orange, green, white. And yeah, it took way too long to get him on the field. His statistics were great. He's getting in the backfield, he's creating pressures, quarterback hurries. He's doing all the things that you need to do. And even in games where it's like, well, mine is not getting any pressure. Okay, cool. He's on the bench for a couple plays, getting a breather. He comes back in, hot knife through butter, through that defense or offensive line. You know what I mean? But if he played a glamour position, he would be a superstar already. But I think that if he performs to the level of his talent this year and next year, regardless of playing a glamorous position, he's going to be a superstar.
Yeah, I am no defensive line scout by any stretch of the imagination, but I believe it was the Virginia game. I could tell who's making a difference now, because suddenly somebody's caving in the offensive line, somebody's disrupting plays, blowing plays up, and it was Leonard Taylor. All right, another 5-star in the fold, of course, in 21, number 1 rated safety in the country, James Williams out of Fort Lauderdale's American Heritage.
Yeah, again, another superstar, uncommonly sized. So, he's 6'5", 235, 240, playing safety. There were years, multiple, where myself and other recruiting analysts saying, this kid's going to outgrow the safety position. He's just going to keep growing, like a Greg Russo, when he gets to college and things like that. If he's already this size, he's going to outgrow that position. He's going to grow into an outside backer. He's going to grow into a defensive end, which, 6'5", 240, put on another 10, 15 pounds, he could be a defensive end. And invariably, name searching on Twitter, James Williams would come in. I remember he did it to myself. He did it to Buck Elliott. He did it to another couple riders. And he would quote tweet and say, "Nah, I'm a safety." Okay, all right. But he hasn't gotten physically bigger since his freshman, sophomore year of high school, which is scary when you think about it, when he started at Monsignor pace. But yeah, another absolute superstar. He's a game changer. He's a leader back there. He has the chip on his shoulder that you need to have, I think, to be a defender, to be a Miami Hurricane safety. You know what I mean? Wearing that 0 out there, making plays all over the field. And one of the plays that I love most from James Williams was after a touchdown in the Carolina game. And he happened to be near the goal line as the person scored. And he didn't slow up. He put a shoulder in that guy. And then, of course, the whole Carolina offense want to come over. And he's like, "Hey, I'm playing to the whistle, cuz. If y'all want to fight, we can fight. But I'm not giving up." And everybody else on my roster, the other players, they might have slowed up. They might have Big 0, J-Dub, I'm about that. And I hated to see that he had that energy and none of his Miami teammates were there. There were literally 4 other Carolina offensive players, including 3 offensive linemen who came over to, protect the dude, I don't fault them for that. But bro, come on, man. What are you, and James Williams had that energy and nobody else did. But that's the kind of energy that I'm talking about. When I say let's be jerks, that's the kind of stuff that I mean. And if it rubs you the wrong way on the other side, tough. But an absolute superstar, game-winning interception at Pittsburgh. He can affect the game in the run game. Super quick to diagnose that. More flexible in his hips than you would think to flip his hips and get deep. If you want to put him in a single high safety in center field, and covers lots of ground, has the length to get pretty much anywhere. But yeah, he's another guy who should be a top 2-round draft pick. He's super duper duper. The physical size is one of the major defining factors of his game, because if he were normal safety size, 6'1", 205, doing what he was doing, that's what was the kid's name from Pittsburgh? Paris something? Number 12? Paris Ford?
Yes, Paris Ford.
He's that, right? First team All-ACC, but he's doing that stuff at 6'5", 240. Yo! That's the size that I'm talking about this roster needing. And it doesn't necessarily need to be offensive and defensive line, but you want to have these freaks. You want to have these guys who are able to do the job, but not be, an inch too small or, a step too slow. You know what I mean? You have a guy who's able to do it at an elite level, and he's elitely sized. Again, absent an injury, he's a guy who should be a top 2-round draft pick. He, along with, his classmate Leonard Taylor, a leader on this defense, for this season and moving forward.
All right. The third rated player in the class of 21 is, of course, this is a different position because there's only one on the field, and we know what the current situation is. Jake Garcia, quarterback, Loganville, Georgia, 8th rated at his position, top 50 player in the country.
Yeah, ended up at Loganville, Grayson, but obviously we know he transferred from I think 4 different high schools. He played at a couple out in California. Then he went to Valdosta. They said he was ineligible there. He moves to Grayson and he's eligible the same week. Even the whatever, go look it up. I wrote it in the recruit notebook. Incredibly talented, cannon for an arm. The highest rated quarterback that we've signed since Kyle Wright, I believe. So very, very talented. And he's a guy who should be challenging for the starting job next year. Again, this is projecting a great season from Tyler Van Dyke. Tyler Van Dyke then moving on to the NFL draft and vacating the firm grasp that he has on the QB1 job in Miami. But Jake Garcia is an elite talent. If nothing else, again, top 10 in his position, top 50 overall, and the highest rated quarterback that we've signed in 15 years. That speaks to the caliber that he has. And let it not go by the wayside. Prior to Jake Garcia breaking his ankle in the Central Connecticut State game, which was the same game in which D'Eriq King got injured, prior to that, he was ahead of Tyler Van Dyke on the depth chart. A year younger, having been an early enrollee, so Van Dyke had already been there for a spring, a full season, and another spring. So he came in the spring and then the summer, and 13 was in front of 9. That, you can go look it up. You can go look at that game, Central Connecticut State. The second quarterback off the sideline after D'Eriq King, the first one off the bench was Jake Garcia. I'm not making that up. That was accurate at the time. So that speaks to the fact of the talent there, because we saw what Van Dyke ended up being, but on the performance at the time, and you factor in future potential and things like that, Garcia was in front of Van Dyke. I'm not saying you're going to get the exact same performance that we got from Tyler Van Dimes at the end of last season, but that's the caliber of player that you have in Van Dyke, and the staff at the time put Garcia ahead. So again, an elite talent. I think, the story of him in Miami is really going to come down to, does Tyler Van Dyke leave or not at the end of the season? If he does not leave, then I don't see a path to Garcia staying here. He's going to want to go somewhere and play. If Van Dyke does go to the NFL draft, then it is Jake Garcia's job to lose for 2023. So we'll see. But definitely a guy at the top roster. And he's going to unquestionably be your backup quarterback this year.
Romello Brinson got into 4 games, caught 7 passes, 1 touchdown against Central Connecticut State. Most notably, his biggest contribution against a good team was 3 catches, 33 yards against Michigan State out of Northwestern High School. He was the 25th rated wide receiver in the class.
Miami Northwestern, the West. If you remember, that was the commitment down there where he brought in the video board and everything, had the video caught up, where this voice from this show was included in the montage prior to his commitment to Miami.
That's great.
That was, I was streaming it live on Instagram, and I know some people around in that area who were there, and then everybody who was listening, and streaming and everything, they're like, "Hey, yo, Cam, hey, yo, Cam." I'm like, but that's a little bit about me, but about him, he looks to be ready to kind of take a step forward. He's wearing the 0 on offense, I believe, wide receiver. And, he had a super acrobatic catch last year, jumping over somebody. He's continued that in the spring, has great size at 6'2". He's a guy, Miami does need more speed on the team. Lee Green, I agree. And not just speed at the skill positions, but across the roster. Yes. That includes linebacker, that includes, even some defensive line, the embedded positions, not the standard speed positions, but yes, need to increase athleticism, I agree. Anyway, Romello Brinson is going to be in the 2 deep at wide receiver this year. And I think that's a good thing. He needs to take a step forward still. Obviously, having only been on campus for 1 year, but flashes elite potential. He had some great highlights that Miami shared during spring practice. Things like that, which is great. And Miami Northwestern is known as being one of the better teams, one of the better high school programs to develop wide receiver talent. And so coming from there, being one of their latest All-American players, and staying home in Miami is a great thing. I don't think that he's ready to be the number one receiver this year. I think that he should play a good role on the team, but it stands within reason that he could be near at the top of the rotation for wide receiver in 2023 and beyond. But yeah, a great talent, a very good player. Needs a little bit more consistency with his hands, but again, another high school All-American in this class, and a very strong player on this roster. So he should really have a positive impact for Miami moving forward.
Same position, 2021 class, of course, Jacoby George, just a few positions down at 29th rated wide receiver in the country, number 175 in the composite.
Yeah, from Plantation, the Plantation Colonels, who play at Plantation Pal Field, which is near to back to their school, which is neither here nor there. Anyways, Jacoby George, I think if anybody's going to take a real big step forward towards being the number one receiver on this team, it's going to be Jacoby George. He's a guy who really seems to have great chemistry with Tyler Van Dyke. He's a guy who, punt return, kick return, base defense or base offense, and what he does. He's a guy who shows up in a lot of different places, and he seemed to be really stepping into his own throughout the middle end part of last season and continued his progression through the spring. So yeah, very excited about Jacoby George. There's lots of guys who have said that, he's going to be that dude. There are lots of guys in high school when he was recruited who said he was that dude. And I'm like, yeah, I'd seen him play a couple times and I think that he's good. And they're like, no, Cam, no. Not that he's good, not that he can fit on this roster. That dude. And it seems, he's flashed that. I need to see maybe a couple more flashes. I need to see that flash become maybe some sustained light in that way. But I think that the potential is there. And I think that if there's going to be a guy who really steps forward at the wide receiver position and steps into the vacuum left by the departures of Charleston Rambo, your all-time career leader in catches and yards in the single season, and Mike Harley, your career-leading receptions leader for the Miami Hurricanes, I think that Jacoby George is in a prime position to step into that vacuum and take up that space in a very, very positive way.
And Jacoby George caught 7 passes for $183 last year. Next up on the list, we go to guard center Lawrence Seymour, 11th rated at his position out of Miami Central.
Yeah, interior lineman, Central, really known for offensive linemen and running backs, and then defenders. But on the offensive line, offensive line and running back, whereas Northwestern is more wide receiver centric currently. Even though, yeah, there are players at every position at both of those schools, but, whatever. Seymour has talent. Another high school All-American, another first-team All-Dade performer from Dade County. He's a guy that, maybe is another Mango season away from seeing rotational snaps inside, just because I think that you need to grow a little bit as an offensive lineman. You need that grown man strength, just your body maturing. But very skilled, come from a winning program. I think they won 3 or 4 state championships when he was at Central. Being at the point of attack for that, is really essential. So, you played big time snaps and big time games in high school, which matters, and then, continuing a developmental path forward. Miami obviously added to the top of the offensive line at his position this year through the transfer portal. Logan Sagapalu being the main guy there, but then you're going to get some guys back from injury. Chauncey Rivers, who's your best offensive lineman last year, and things like that. So yeah, there's no clear path or quick path to playing time for Seymour. But again, he's very talented, and the potential is right there. So I think that working with Cristobal and Mirabal is going to be beneficial for all offensive linemen, including Leonard Seymour. And I'm excited to see where it goes in the future. Obviously, he needs to put the work in. Obviously, there's some other blue chip guys also on the roster who are maybe a little bit older that we're going to talk about eventually, who, they were blue chip recruits and being recruited by everybody all over the nation for a reason. They have not lived up to that, in college, but it is incumbent upon them to do the work and the program to develop them and give them every potential ability to be successful at this level. Leonard Seymour is yet another one of those guys. But again, even if you follow I've said it before, but it's such a great developmental story. If you follow the Danny Isadora line of progression from, Western Cypress Bay years ago, red shirt, scout team, third team, he didn't really play meaningful snaps till the end of his redshirt sophomore year. He didn't really, and that was only a handful, but he wasn't really a rotation guy until his fourth year, his redshirt junior year. Ends up being second team all conference, ends up as a draft pick, ends up in the league for a few years. Maybe we're looking at kind of that kind of performance or progression for Seymour. If you're able with this new staff who specializes obviously in offensive line because of like the head coach being a former offensive lineman and then his best friend being one of the best offensive line coaches in, the game, and you accelerate that and you unlock that potential quicker, great. But I think that Leonard Seymour, if he does what he needs to do, he could challenge for one of those spots, maybe 23. I would think that you would probably, if you're him, targeting 23 or 24, at least to be in the 2 deep at offensive line. But we're going to work tirelessly to find those right guys. But again, if you're looking to get one of those right guys out of offensive line, a 4-star recruit like Leonard Seymour with all of that potential should be on that list. But it's incumbent again upon him to do the work and the program to set up the structures for him to be successful.
Good for one more?
One more, why not?
All right. Caught 5 passes for 86 yards, including a 20-yard touchdown reception that was key in the win at Pittsburgh. Tight end Elijah Arroyo, 7th-rated tight end in the country.
I like this kid, man. He's good. He's good. Miami obviously produces offensive linemen. Offensive linemen. I was watching the end of the half of this basketball game, so I said the wrong thing. Sorry. Miami produces tight ends unlike anyone else. And he is the combination of size and athleticism that you need. No, he's not 6'7" or anything. He's only 6'4", but that's definitely playable size. And I think that we need to unlock him. And he's a guy that you can move around in a lot of different places. He's big enough and getting, stronger at the point of attack where you can put him in line. You can put him as a wing. So, you have the line and then the guy one step back, that's your wing. You can put him in H-back. You can put him in the slot. You could put him outside. But if you're going to put a tight end outside, I would go with Jaleel Skinner from this current recruit or the 2022 recruiting class, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. But if you want to put Arroyo out there or come out in one alignment and then flex to a different alignment and then have him outside, motion or by shifting or something like that, you can do that. But he's a guy who I think has sky high potential. I think that we're only seeing him scratch the surface for what he can do. And Miami is going to, I think, target the tight ends, try to be intentional a little bit more about that. And when you have the talent of the tight end room, which is always stocked with elite talent, including Arroyo, if you're good and you're open, the ball's going to find you because Tyler Van Dyke, has the ability to get the ball there. Where's there? There's anywhere in the field, basically. I'm not saying that you can throw the ball 100 yards, but in the active play, even if it's deep, the ball can get there, right? So Arroyo is a guy who can find space. I need to, see if he can make a guy miss. Maybe he doesn't have the most wiggle, but you don't necessarily need a tight end to do that. Obviously, he's able to block. We brought him in at fullback last year when we ran some I formation. And he's from Miami, moved to Texas, and played his high school football out there. So, I know that teams throw the ball around a lot, but in Texas, you still got to run it and you still got to block. And that kid knows how to block. So, you're a passable, if not slightly above average blocker. You definitely are a good pass catcher. You're elite enough or athletic enough to score touchdowns, and make guys and have mismatches based upon your athleticism and things like that. I just think that he's the next in line. and there's going to be another one after him. Khalil Brantley is still in that room. He's not. I think that I would put Arroyo above Brantley in terms of the pecking order. But, like I said, Jaleel Skinner, he's another one. We're going after another couple in this current class. You're never going to have to worry about the tight end position at the University of Miami, and players like Elijah Arroyo are why you're not going to have to worry about it. I'm just excited to see what he's able to do this year, next year, and the year after. But I think that he's a real elite talent, and I'm really excited that he's on this roster.
Kim, I do know someone who would love to debate you on tight end U.
Oh, God. Which Notre Dame guy do you want to bring on?
Oh, an Iowa guy. Which it depends. I got to say, it depends what the framework of the dates are. Are we talking all time? Are we talking the last 20 years? What are we talking? Are we talking just right now? We're talking right now. That Iowa program's tough to knock off as tight end U right this second. I'm not talking bringing up Jeremy Shockey and Kellen Winslow and so forth. I'm just talking about right this second. So I didn't bring it up. He was the one that said, man, I wanted, because I actually challenged him when he said Iowa's tight end U. He was talking to, I went, whoa, hang on. I said, are we talking all time? I said, Miami would be the best producer of tight ends all time. So I was the one who stuck up for Miami. Now I'm in the position to do that. I just stick up for whatever I believe is the truth.
Right.
And I said, what's our framework? And I said, if it's all time, it's Miami. And then he goes, yeah, I don't know. And of course, he's not aware of some Miami players if they're not named Shockey or of that ilk. So he wasn't aware of some Miami standouts. But he had a good case for right this second when you look at George Kittle and T.J. Hawkinson and Noah Fant in the NFL. Okay. And they've got a really good one right now. But I don't know if he wanted to go all time or otherwise. But anyway.
Interesting. I'll have to consider and ponder.
All right. He is Cam Underwood. He delivers each and every Wednesday night right here at the Voice of College Football, and we always appreciate it and hope all of you do as well. We appreciate the super chats. We appreciate the likes, everything you do that adds up to contributing to our show here that Cam has made happen for us for a long, long time. Cam, what's going on at State of the U?
Well, like I said, Justin DeTavio was evaluating who would be the third tentpole team on Miami's schedule if they do go to the 3-5-5 scheduling model. There's probably a couple other things in the editorial. DeTavio stole my thunder with that one, so I have to look for what I'm going to have in there. But there's definitely going to be baseball. John Reynolds covering the baseball team is out there. I know there's some other commentary and analysis that we're working on, and then getting ready for all the stuff to push towards next season. So your player previews, your position previews, your coach profiles, and all kinds of things like that. So all those things will be forthcoming. Obviously, recruiting is going to kick up, so our recruiting coverage, getting back to at least weekly. I'll try to get back to because I had to push for a little bit there at the secret day job. But having that because official visit season is going to be coming down the pike starting in June because there's already a couple that are on the books for June. So looking at those guys and just kind of evaluating the state of this recruiting class, which I know some people are getting a little antsy about it because it's not there aren't guys just jumping in the boat, like when you have fish, the salmon just swimming upstream and they're all just jumping in the boat. That's not happening with this recruiting class, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. But we're going to talk about that and more. So Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at The State of the U. My personal Twitter account is at Underwood Sports. Please come on over and fan with us. Please enjoy our new commenting system. Let us know about that. Engage and interact with everything that we have up there. And we will connect with you soon.
This is easily going to turn into one of my very favorite super chats ever. Falconer X. Cam, can you do me a favor and say, this is the Voice of College Football, like James Earl Jones said, this is CNN. I love this.
This is such a great super chat and a wonderful question. And if most people did not know, James Earl Jones, wonderful and famous actor with an incredible voice, to whom I have looked up my entire adult life since my voice changed before 5th grade. did the old "This is CNN." Also, the voice of Darth Vader. Also had a very strong lisp and stutter, speaking impediment when he was younger.
Wow.
And he took oratory lessons because he couldn't, when asked in school to like read in class or speak aloud, he had such an impediment. And that's how he cultivated and crafted his diction and pronunciation to go in towards, his theater career, which was, legendary, and obviously his acting career, things like that. So I'm going to do it off screen because like now I'm like worried about living up to the legacy of James Earl Jones. And also the voice of Mufasa, in case for the original Lion King. But too, I won't do it off screen because you did the super chat, and I will say, just that. Okay, this is the voice of college football. This is the voice. This. So I'll ask for your direction then, Falcon Rex. You can leave it in the comment, or I'll ask Mark. Do you want me to prioritize this? Do you want me to prioritize the voice? Like, I can give it a couple different reads, but
He asked for the CNN version.
Okay.
And so
I will live up to it.
That's what comes to mind for me.
Got it. No problem. I will even get close to the microphone so we get as clean a take as possible. This is the voice of college football.
It's beautiful.
And you're welcome. That was fun.
It is phenomenal. Thank you, Falcon Rex, for asking that. And Cam, thank you for delivering, because I enjoyed that very much for obvious reasons. Cam, thank you for delivering. And then, of course, delivering. So,
hey, man, that's what I'm here for anytime.
Delivering.
Have a good week, guys. We'll see you soon.
Then upon request. Yes. Thanks, Cam.